Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and good night, depending on where you are. Hope you're having a good day. I am your Sensei Al Bob, your griot, here at our YouTube channel, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. And remember, never believe anything I say. I am not telling you to do anything or think any way or believe anything, right? I want you to think for yourself. I want you to be able to suspend your disbelief so you can look at almost anything and think about it honestly, open, and freely. Unlike most things that are going on here presently in our country, we're in the midst of a presidential election, and basically, we are living in a time of weaponized identity politics, right? Now, America is pretty much like that. You know, the only good Indians are dead Indian. Those terrible wops, those Polacks, whoever was off the boat the last got the negative vibe, right? And the poor slave, the black man, was always on the third rung. Not so much on the bottom, but on the third rung, They're Irish, when they were first here, they were, below dogs, So that's, identity politics. And that's how it's going. Divide and conquer. That is the tool of the hidden hand, right? Those who sit at the high table, just throw the scraps on the floor for the dogs. We are the dogs, right? But in true essence of the human character, things don't work from the top down, they work from the bottom up. When it's always coming from the top down, you basically end up with the end, with the Visigoths at the wall, with the peasants eating cake and then chopping off the rich people's heads. And but every time this happens, every time there is a revolution of sorts, you know, basically, that Who song, we won't get fooled again, same as the old times, you constantly get the same characters. Well, right now, uh, we're being pushed against the wall by the hidden hand's inability to control. And that's the whole status of their existence is control, right? Money is just a tool to them. It's not wealth. They're printing the money. They have control of the finances, that's for sure, and they have control of the environment, the water, the air, the food we eat. Whether we live or die. This novel CV-19 is pretty obviously an genetically modified organism. And the fact that we kind of knew about this a year or two ago. I mean, the RNA strand was going around to different laboratories. And so we saw that there was, anyone in epidemiology of infectious disease said it's, not whether we're going to get a pandemic, it's when, right? And so when this popped up in October, we didn't do anything about it. And the fact that we have no test kits right now is going to mean, lots of people's lives, right? Right now, in Hunan, right, where this kind of broke out in China, right? Well, the Chinese central government wanted to ignore it. This doctor who was an eye doctor saw this occurring in his patients, and he said, "Hey, something's going on here," and they put him in jail, right? Until he said he wouldn't say anything, and then he died. And there were a couple other doctors who did the same, right? And here we are at 4 minutes and 37 seconds, and AI has even left. So, I'm talking about something that's relevant to today, right? So this morning I did a show, which is, hey, you want to know how to meditate, right? And I did a really how to do it and explained it all and the dynamics and how to use your Akashic record and how to go into your superconscious mind, and showed how time, time dilation, and that time doesn't really exist, and the story of Satan and love's co-creation, and that God equals love's co-creation, right? And so pretty much from here on in, I'm going to have a subject matter like what we have right now, the world apart, and there's I'm working on um, you know, first, when I first started off, had 40 days, 20 nights, breaking into what Dreamy Dreamland was going to be. And then I kind of had, about 6 months of just stream of consciousness of telling stories and being motivated by what I meditated on that moment and the fact that I was on the bop, and living in the woods and, had no real uh, care. And, at that time, I didn't, whether I had something to eat, it's what was in the dumpster, how much, living on $481 a month, and, being really sick and needing medicines, right? Now I kind of figured out how to do that. But then, I mean, just a few days ago, I find out the HMO that was taking care of me because I was really poor, because they're a nonprofit entity, who could give me all the medicines I needed for 90 days for $30. Whereas if I bought it at, a pharmacy, a corporate pharmacy, I won't use any names, but it would cost $2,800 for just 1 month, not 3 months, 1 month, right? So I found out that my HMO who took care of me, base and I would go visit them, and they would charge me like $10 a visit, right? Because I was at the lowest, I proved that I had zero, and they said, okay, you fit into our little category. Well, they've been bought out by a very large insurance company and big pharma company. And if you go look at who's a big insurance company, who's a big pharma company, you know which company I'm talking about. Anyway, and so they bought them because a certain level of their profit, they will be able to not have to pay any taxes if they run it through this nonprofit entity, right? So they will not have to pay taxes on profit, not their big nut, but just their profit of $60 billion from a certain category of their business, right? And they're $1 trillion business, and we spend trillions of dollars on healthcare in the United States, and we're like number 48. Like Zimbabwe has better healthcare than us. So the thing about this novel CV-19 and that Hunan province, that was a industrialized big city, big town, had hospitals, had centralized healthcare, which we don't have. Our healthcare is all over the place. It is not, dealing with communal diseases. Isn't CDC have control through the whole country? No, your county has control, your state has control, and so we could never do what China did. That basically wrestled this virus to not eat up their whole country, right? And now China, it seems, knew about this, whether they engineered it or not, and let it go. Meaning, the horse got out of the door because the Chinese New Year, which is a big holiday in China, the Hunan province, China basically let 5 million people get on airplanes from the Hunan province and go all over the world. And then 3 days after they let 5 million people out of the barn, they got, come to Jesus, and like welded people's apartment houses closed, and dump trucks of rocks against doors, so there's only one door that could come through, and closed everything, right? And that's kind of wrestled it, but They did that because the virus, once it popped out, spread like wildfire, like no other virus that they had seen, and it had a mortality rate quite high. Now they haven't, figured out the denominator. They haven't really gotten to a place of where, who had it and who died of it. But it seems, the WHO is saying that this has a mortality rate of, 3%, which would be about 20% higher than what flu is. So in the United States, we lose between 20 and 60,000 people a year to flu. 20% above that so that's 1%. So 20 times, let's say 60. So 2 times 6. So that'd be 1,200,000 people will die of this in the United States, before July 4th. Now, don't believe anything I say. I am not a scientist. I'm just looking at raw data, and there's not enough data to see where anything's going. And our present administration is like, oh, you can go to work if you got this, if it's not too bad. Oh, well, maybe we could use the flu, Carrot Head, at that meeting with the guys who make the inoculation, said maybe we could use the flu shot for this. And the guy, oh, no, Mr. Brett, we can't do that. We can't do that. And it's like it is something out of South Park, I'd like to see what the comedy show of Showtime. They have this thing called a cartoon president, and it's really great. I mean, it pegs everyone, not just Carrot Head, but everybody. Madame Leplowski, crying Chuck, and everybody, and little Mikey, and so I'm telling you, this has to be a TV show. Unable to connect to chat. Please try again later. They didn't like what I'm talking about here. So anyway, I wanted to hear from you guys about this. This morning we had a chat, and Lola and Jane Jane was only on there for a moment or two. Now there were about 5 to 8 people watching, who were there. But soon as I said, okay, let's go into meditation, So since there's nobody going to chat here, and I'm still running, and nobody's here, but it's going to be here for posterity's sake. You know what we're going to do? We're going to go into guided meditation, and we're going to remote view what's going on, right? We're going to remote view the hidden hand, the powers that shouldn't be, the sock puppets, the usual suspects, right? And we're going to take a look. And you, the viewer, not me, the griot telling the story, you are going to see this, right? And this is a very, very, very valuable tool because, if you really do this, you're going to see stuff like you won't believe, right? And it might give you an inside leg up. So you might survive, maybe. Who knows? So here we go, right? So everyone get comfy, like I'm in a nice, easy chair. And so I just got nice arms and I can't fall out of this chair. So when I go into state and I leave my body to remote view, I won't, hurt myself, right? And I've got this nice little coat, women's coat that I got from Walmart, and it was on closeout. And I don't know what this thing's made out of, but it's like very light, very thin, and amazingly keeps you warm. Just doing that, I can feel that 60% of the heat going up the top of my head, keeping my whole body warm. This thing is like thinner than thin. I mean, the whole coat weighs about 3 ounces, So anyway, so that's what you need to do. You got to get in a comfortable place, have your body be somewhat warm, and and we're going to go into state, right? Now, people go, oh, I can't meditate. How do I meditate? Oh, do you give me a secret word that I can, is my mantra? Can you touch my third eye? No. All it takes is for you to breathe 20% in, 30% out. And why I do this, right? Because it's like 20% right there. That's kind of how you measure it. Plus, the tips of your fingers are the most sensitive part of your psychic dowsing rod, which is your body, right? And you, when you do this, right? This is when you do muscle testing to yourself. You do this, you ask, how are my lungs, right? And since your two fingers can't press them apart, um, you know, then my lungs are good, right? How's my diabetes? Not too bad, right? I mean, it just, was really bad. It would have done that, right? So your fingers are the dowsing rod, and when you're dowsing, your fingers go on. Anyway, so that's, your tips of your fingers are the things that connect you to the larger universe, right? Right. So let's go. Right, you're in a comfortable place. You're warm. You're safe, secure. Now you're going to close your eyes, because when you close your eyes, what you do is like when you have REM sleep, right? You if you've ever watched anyone have sleep, and you see their little eyes are zipping around their eyelids, that's called rapid eye movement. And what they're doing is they are in their imaginary mirror. It's like a movie theater, and they are watching the movie, and their eyes are zipping around, like just if they were watching TV or in a movie theater or in real life, they'd be watching what's going on. And when you go to sleep, your autonomic system kind of shuts your body down. Because if you were, we all dream. You may not remember your dreams, but we all dream. And so as you dream, and this is why some people sleepwalk, because they're dreaming and their body, isn't unplugged. But when you go to sleep, your autonomic system kind of takes over, right? So it keeps your heart pumping and your lungs breathing and all the little biologics going, and it keeps you from walking around, right? And that's part of it. And why people have, breathing issues like, when you sleep apnea, and you snore, it's basically your inability to process the prana. So prana is this energetic uh, presence. And, back in the day, in the 19th century, and, earlier, from like the Greeks on, they called, what we are now starting, the physics are calling it dark matter, but that's very inappropriate because it's energy, not matter. And so back in the day, they used to call it ether, right? The ether, right? And that space between the different dimensions, right? Um, there's this like little vortex of energy keeping the dimensions. Otherwise, they would like go into each other. So there's this little, that is where the ether is. That is where you can, take out 0 point energy. And that's what Tesla discovered. When they made the first big generators up there at Niagara Falls, at the end of the armature of where the generator is, because it's polyphase, meaning that coil isn't just two coils, it's three. And so it's these three high voltage electromagnetic fields circulating amongst each other. And at the end, there is this little twisty thing of energy comes together and creates what is known as a torsion field. And that's once they kind of discovered that, because weird things would happen at the end of these generators. And this is what gave Einstein and Tesla the thing, this is where, the string theory and hyperdynamic physics came from, and the idea of parallel universes and things of that nature. And because this was a physical thing that was occurring at the end of these generators, that it was creating a weirdness that they could not define by Newtonian physics, right? Or even Einstein, physics. And so, that's what a field theory is, And the field equation is that field right there, that torsion field. And so it creates what is known as scalar waves. Everything else electrical is Hertzian waves, meaning XY coordinate, right? Scalar, 16 dimensions, right? And so, that's a lot more dimensions that we live in. But at the end of that little armature, or big armature, it's creating an environment of that. And that's what CERN does, right? In a larger way, in a more controlled way. And that's what the Philadelphia experiment was about. That's what they did. They put a torsion field around that ship, and it popped in and out of dimensional space, and went to from Pennsylvania to North Carolina to it popped around, and as it popped in and out of dimensional space, if the sailors were moving around and it popped in, when they were walking through that door, and it popped to another place, and it popped back into this dimension, they were like halfway through that door, so they were halfway through that. The ship did a little shift, so instead of being in the doorway, now that person was in a bulkhead, and so his little arms and head were sticking out of a metal wall. And so that is how weird our reality really is, and we don't want to see that. So we're ready to believe what the proselytizers of religions and quote unquote science, and science is so irrelevant. It's not truth. It's guys making stuff up to explain things that the powers that shouldn't be don't want you to think about. So that's why you have psychology, because you are seeing things in your superconscious mind. You are seeing things in your Akashic record when you sleep. That's what dreams are. And you have these experiences of deja vu, where your life is going down a track, and then a dimensional shift comes, and you now have one foot on one track and one foot on another track in another dimension, and you're experiencing, I feel like I've been here before. Well, you were, but in another dimension. And if you were to truly think about this stuff, especially if you prayed on it, and that's what Jesus did, that's what Moses did, that's what Muhammad did, that's what Vishnu did, that's what Buddha did, that's what every grand master did. They had these experiences, and they said, I'm not just going to ignore this. I'm going to, think about it, pray about it, spend 40 days and 40 nights out here in the desert where there are no cell phones or TVs or hot pockets and a microwave oven. I'm going to, and that's why I live out in the deep green, because it's as deep away from all of the disconcerting things like TV and the internet and television and what have you. Even though I'm somewhat close to it, I can go to the end of the cul-de-sac, where my neighbor is, and uses Wi-Fi, right? But I'm a good couple of miles and a couple of mountain ranges between him and me. So when I'm in my little under the tree, which it's April, mid-April, I'm basically going to be there. Period. Right. And I'm not going to be on the bop at all, and because right now I think it's safe to get around, but the novel CV-19 is all over America, it's everywhere, and what truly makes this virus novel is, again, they've never seen it before. Now, there's loads of coronaviruses. The flu's coronavirus, and SARS was, and there are a ton. And these things mutate, but they understand mutations because it's just a mutation of something that's been there, right? But this is something totally different. That's why it seems to me, anyway, and don't believe anything I say, that it's been engineered, and for a socioeconomic political reason. Now, I think China let this thing get out, let the horse out of the barn, because the virus that they are more concerned with is the one of the you know longing of their citizens for freedom. That started with Tiananmen Square within the construct of, and that's why they had the social revolution in the '60s, because there were people who were going up against Mao, saying, no, maybe we should tweak this thing a little bit. So he put 100 million people in re-education camps and killed half of them. So did Joe Stalin. Uncle Joe did the same. And pretty much any political group that in essence is based on control, right? Not communications, not sharing, not being the pebble in the pond, not being co-creative with love, not being with empathetic to all our relations, but control. I'm in control. Everyone else has to be under my thumb, right? Well, that's a pure you get ready for failure. And, it's when that's going to fail, who knows? But it's going to definitely fail. It's like that scene from the original Star Trek, right? And the Jim and a few people get into the transporter and go someplace, and they come back, and there's a little malfunction, and bingo, they're in another dimension where the they're living in a fascist, oligarchic, corporate Star Trek instead of the benevolent fascist, oligarchic Star Trek. Because the little crew that the unity of all those that's a kind of a fascist organization, even though it's benevolent, right? So the they're Jim, and they go there, and everybody's killing each other, and it's like kind of like what the Carrot Pinhead's administration is like. You're fired, but kind of like what the Billy Boy and his Madame Lafarge did during their time in the White House. So however you can think the weirdest of this stuff is, like Shakespearean, or straight out of South Park, or The Simpsons. That's what's going on in our world. They're just a little mirror, and they can't even get close to as weird as it really is. And so someone was asking earlier on, when I was describing the dynamics of the human condition, that, well, aren't we, what about the aliens, and what about this, and what about, like, it's irrelevant. Yes, we are someone's basic chemistry experiment from high school. That's what our ugly. We are not this. This isn't us. This is an avatar. This was created by the Anunnaki so we would go dig up gold, right? And the guy who is Loki, in the Greek mythology and the Roman mythology, that guy, and he's also in the Egyptian mythology, but they different names. But Loki, go look up Loki. He's the cheeky monkey. He's the god who is, kind of on. He's the one who gave humans fire, so we could, have technology, right? And he did that just because he wanted to throw a curveball into his brothers and sisters' gods, game, And that's the ghost in the machine. That's the unexpected consequence. That is what humanity's free will is. That's why we are still here, because of all the terrible, mean, crappy, stupid things that humanity has done. We should be toast by now, but we're not, because the thing that saves our butt is our better angels, not our worst devils, right? So when we are, in co-creation with love, that's our best angel, right? And that's where we have to go. So, let's see, how much time have we spent here? Oh, almost 30 minutes, right? 29 minutes and 53 seconds. So there you are sitting down. You're breathing that 20% in, 30% out. And what that does is you're breathing that 20%, lifts your diaphragm, opens the alveola and the little fibers that are like antennas for the prana, which is Father God's energy of life. The thing that animates our body is this prana. So we breathe in that prana, right? And the blood goes through there, right? And it's highly enriched with iron. Our blood is like, you know, an amazing substance. It really is. Of all the biological stuff in our body, our blood is the most amazing. And, the different parts of our blood enables this, so we're breathing in the prana, the little alveoles are like going like this, the blood goes through that, picks up that energy, that photonic energy. Whereas the thing that normally kind of keeps things going is what made our little avatar was Lucifer, right? What made the ugly bag of water was Lucifer. That was, I mean, there were all kinds of creatures roaming around the Garden of Eden, right? And then, you know, love's co-creation did not create Adam and Eve. Satan did, and the original sin wasn't us eating that apple, God saying, "Don't eat from this tree of knowledge." No, sorry, not gonna be it. I mean, it was because this avatar, right, and the apple that we ate was we were this, embodied or out of bodied or spirit, you know, soul or free will, and the sin that soul did was we listened to Satan. Our bodies are the apple, right? We said, "Oh wow, you mean if I get in that body, I can masturbate and have a lot of fun and screw any kind of, I can do all kinds of things. I'll have hands and a brain and eyeballs and I can play pool and make money and have a big house and a speedboat. Oh wow, yeah." Oh. Instead of, freely with our free will, living in bliss with love's co-creation, which you should be the thing you really want to do, not, masturbate and have sex with monkeys, So, but we said, no, hey, I can eat that cake and the steak and the lobster. Sure. Okay. Why would we want to eat our brother lobster? You ever hung out with a cow? They're the sweetest, kindest, really, they're like big dogs, and why should we eat them? It's like eating your child, But we do because the industry makes the meat so disembodied from that cow that it's like eating anything, right? And so, but we're eating the energetics of a living thing. And that's part of the sin that went down with Lucifer. And Lucifer was like, right? And every day we are challenged by this, right? This material world, right? And so that's why I live out in the middle of the deep green. And I kept, about 11 months ago, I started with the opportunity of, we have 18 or 20 months. I forgot where I started, but, we have this, many months of the window of opportunity, right? And we are now at month 10. And that means the window never closes, but the real opportunity of the window will kind of diminish as of November, right? It just happens to coalesce with who we're going to vote for. And, when basically the powers that be wanted Joe Biden to run against Donald. And that's why Donald did the perfect conversation with the new president of the Ukraine, right? Because they wanted to set the subject. The carrot head's supposed to be so corrupt. He's no more corrupt than anybody else, you know. And Bernie is as corrupt as anybody else because. So what happened was, Bernie should be president because Bernie had won the Democratic, election to run for the Democratic Party, but the DNC switched it, and we know that happened through WikiLeaks. They have all of the emails, all of the everything, all how the super delegates and all of they took California away from him, and because the only person who could lose to Donald Trump was Hillary Clinton. The only person who can lose to uh, Donald Trump is Joe Biden, because the guy is like, you know, so he's going to be up on stage, um, you know, with Bernie. And the thing about Bernie, why Bernie is actually an excellent person and a good, person who could run, be a good executive, is that he believes in something. He's believed in it his whole political life. He has stuck to it. He works on it. And yet he's not a politician, because politicians, meaning, Biden's going to say all this crap about him and Bernie won't say anything, right? And Bernie right now should be talking about how this whole thing is a scam. He should be taking a page from Donald Trump's playbook and talk about, collusion and hidden agendas, and because it's what it is. And, the way Buttigieg and Amy and all the rest of the 19 people, the only person who's a righteous candidate is Tammy Gabbard, right? And you can tell because the powers that be give her no time. Whenever she was up on the dais 3 times, and she took just people apart, because she used what is called the truth. Those people can't stand up against, like Joe Biden, right? He has a political history of what he's voted for. He wrote the frigging, during the Clinton years, he wrote the crime bill that put 6 million black people in jail, right? And he basically wrote the law that destroyed the black economy. And so he's supposed to be, the great black president. The only reason Obama brought him on board was that he was racist enough to get the white people who might feel nervous about voting for Obama. Now, again, don't believe anything I say, right? Just make up your own mind. Take a little time. All you got to do is, watch things like The Useful Idiots, the guys from Rolling Stone, Jimmy Dore, then watch CNN and MSNBC and Fox, and just a few things, and it's like, how come everything looks so wobbly, right? And then start looking at the evidence. If you just dig a little bit, go online. There are a lot of websites that will give you, what. And Joe Biden has ripped off everybody. He's never written anything himself. I mean, he's and he lies like a rug. He lies as much as Carrot Head does. Maybe not as creative, but. And the other thing, he is, they talk about Carrot Head being having dementia. Well, Joe is totally, if he gets a little stressed, he starts to bleed out of his eyeball. This guy is like, he's older than Donald is, I think, by 8 or 9 years. So, as the demographic of our country is changing, why do we have 2, 3 white men over 70 running? Now, Tulsi Gabbard, she's, a woman from Samoa, so she's a woman of color, right? She is, her religion is, she's a Sikh, right? She's a woman. She's a major in the U.S. Army who served in a hot zone, in a hospital, and every day she dealt with people getting blown up by useless wars, right? We have 900 bases around the world ready to jump off on anyone's shit, right? Whereas China has, 0, and Russia has 2, right? We spend on bases about $2.5 trillion on the military, because our military budget isn't just in the Department of Defense, because a good chunk of our military is the State Department. A good chunk of our military is in the Energy Department. A good chunk of our um, uh, military budget is in our financial dynamic. And virtually every aspect of our government, because the only thing we do these days, we don't make toaster ovens or refrigerators or TVs or cell phones. No, we just make weapons, right? And you look at the three legs of the high table, um, that the stool that everyone who sits at the high table sits on. And there is the Vatican, you know, and the Vatican is a political entity, Vatican City. It has nothing to do with Rome, and has nothing to do with Italy's government. They have their own police, their intelligence is better than the Mossad, the CIA, and MI6. They're better than anybody because they've been around since uh, you know after the day after they killed Jesus. And so then you have the city of London, right? So the Vatican rules religion, right? The city of London, again, is an entity that they have their own police, they have their own army, they have their own legislature. The only person who has any real sway with those guys is the Queen of England, and she is just a she owns stock. She's not the queen of it. They own stock. Whereas in England, and within the Australia, Canada, and the other entities of the common royal whoop-de-doo, they own property. There's places in England where Charles can go into the house and have sex with the wife, because it's in the law there. And they can take the children away and use them as an appetizer. Again, don't believe a word I say, right? Go check it out. It's pretty. Just have to poke around here and there. Go to listen to David Icke, go Jordan Maxwell. He's got that down. And there are a number of other people who Joseph P. Farrell has got a lot of info on that. He's a little nuts. He smokes about 5 cigarettes at one time, and I've never seen a guy chain smoke like Joseph P. Farrell. And he wears funny hats. Well, I wear funny hats, so I can't judge him on that. And in fact, I don't and can't judge anyone. Period. Because it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. All the stuff I'm spouting right now, if you've been breathing that 20% in and breathing that 30% out, you'd be in state right now. You wouldn't have to do any of the hokey stuff that when I do a guided meditation. If you just breathe that 20% in and that 30% out, you would be in state right now. And all the stuff that I've been saying would have been your little, trolley car to go remote view all this stuff. And you would see it for yourself, right? So, that's what they do in the CIA. That's what they do, in the Russian intelligence. That's what they do in Mossad. That's what they do in China. Any good, relevant intelligence entity has, a bureau of where they remote view things. And it's not just governments, but banks have them, investment folks have them. Definitely the secret, the hidden hand goes back to Lucifer, like before time, right? So, and you don't see those guys because they are dimensional characters and they are ruling this planet. But the poster children that bow down to them. And Moloch is a good example of what the hidden hand is. Go look up Moloch, right? Or see it. If you're in state right now, go turn your head to the to the east, and there Moloch is, a burning flame. In in what's his name's, the Hobbit, right? And Frodo had the key and the ring, and they're returning it to the pits of fire, and they were right at the base of that big tall mountain where the big eye was, seeing everything. That's Moloch, right? That's Moloch, right? And the character who was, one of the white guy, you know, wizards who was serving Moloch, right? Well, he would be in the same ilk as Bull, right? And that's what's pretty good about the TV show Stargate, is that they take all of this stuff apart and use it as their character development. It's really quite interesting, because in the U.S. Air Force, who has been out there in space now since like 1939, along with the Nazis, that's a space force that's already out there, solar warden, and the people who are the most powerful in all of this in our military is the Navy, right? Because the Air Force is relatively new. The Navy's been around since the beginning, right? Since since England, right? So again, if you are breathing in 20% and out 30%, you're seeing all this. You're in state. You are remote viewing it. You're seeing some of the scariest crap you ever freaking saw in your freaking life, and you're going, uh-oh. And this is on my little channel, and it'll be there. So you can go and visit it anytime you want, right? And you can get the 411 on what's happening, because it's all happening right in front of you. This little, why they call it, novel, is because they've never seen, it's not ever been in existence. It's not a something that was something else at another time. It's not a mutation. This is something novel, new, created. CRISPR put it together, and you can tell when you look at the RNA strand. They got it. They've had it. Like I said, they've had it for a number of years, so they should have been prepared for this one, right? Kind of like they were prepared for AIDS. AIDS was another artificial one. So was Ebola, but not like this, because this one, at the beginning of the strand is AIDS, and at the end of it is Ebola, right? And so what's going to happen with this, and they're not really preparing people for this, is that, so China's going, oh, we're getting a handle on this, not a problem. And what's really going to happen, and they've been seeing this, is that people got sick, and it's like they had the flu. But when they got tested, oh, they got the virus. So they were put in quarantine and taken care of, and it cost a lot of money. In Wuhan, it destroyed their medical. They used up and spindled and mutilated the healthcare system. Now, Wuhan, their medical system was newer, better, more organized, had resources, had everything ready to go, and it got destroyed by this, right? It was just overpowered. So in America, we are not ready for this, not at all. In China, the Chinese people have the mentality of why they let their government tell them what to do, is because they believe in their government, and they believe, they saw this virus as, like how England stood up against the Nazis, how the Russians stood up against the Nazis, and so they stood up against this virus. Do you really think the American people, with their individuality and their exceptionalism, you're going to tell me what to do? I got to stay inside. You're going to put a dump truck of dirt against my doors, and forget about that. Wear a mask. I don't want to wear a mask. But, the guts. I got to go to work. I got nothing else to support my kiddies. And the government, I don't want a government to help me out. That'd be like communism. I mean, it's like single payer health care. No, we don't need that. I don't need any health care. Why would I need single payer? It's like, woohoo. And it's all coming right in front of our face, right? This little, so if Bernie runs against Donnie, there can be a somewhat enlightened conversation about what's going on. If, Biden goes up against him, it's going to be a seventh grade food fight, right? And what will happen is the October surprise will be, oh man, because we're just not doing the right things right now. I mean, right now in South Korea, they are testing everyone in their country, and they've got it to the point where they have you drive in with your car. You don't go to a doctor's office. You drive them in your car. These guys in spacesuits walk up to your window. They put a little device, measure this, measure that, take a little swab in your back of your throat and up your nose, and then they have you fill out a little form, who you are, where you are, what's your ID number, where you live, all of the above, and then you kind of pull over and park, and in 5 minutes they come back and tell you whether you have the virus or not. 5 minutes, right? And you drive in, right? And they give you a cup of tea and a mask and hand sanitizer. Now people are killing each other and in Walmarts to get masks, So, good luck with this, and that's why if you just breathe in 20% and breathe out 30%, you will be going to state and you can see what's going on behind the curtain. Every time I do this, right, like this morning when I did this, right, and I went through the whole song and dance of doing a guided meditation, there were about 5-6 people there. As soon as I said, okay, everyone start breathing in, it went from 5 or 6 down to 1, meaning everyone chickened out, right? Now, the powers that be have made it so you can't contact me, right? But you can leave a comment at the bottom and say, nobody does that. It'd be nice if you left a comment or two. I mean, not nobody, a few of you do. But, if you can't chat, maybe leave a comment and maybe get a hold of me at the dudeawake42@gmail, right? And if you do that, I'll get back to you. I'm not very good at being able to start the conversation, but I reply because that's all I have to do. Hit the little button reply, and then I give you, you come to me with a question or a problem, I give you not the answer, but what I do give you is concern, is empathy, is a place to vent, and and I give you some insights that I don't tell you how to do, but you can look at it. And it's interesting. So a number of people have, a lot of people, 50-something thousand watch this, but there's only 370 in the cadre, and only about 12 to 20 people are in the chorus, who chat regularly. And but a lot of people contact me with questions, personally, because I know it's just me and them on the Gmail, and I will talk clearly and honestly to them, and then they'll respond, and then I'll respond back, and then they'll respond, and then they go, it's going to be too hard for me to change my life. It's going to, I'd rather suffer. I'd rather be addicted. I'd rather, almost, I'm going to die anyway. I'd rather be miserable than actually have to step up. And even though you're giving me hope that I can, and faith that I can change and have an amazing life, I'd rather just be miserable and die and not learn anything, right? So there have been a lot of people that way that, I can see their situation, I can read their energetics and realize they have a great potential to do something amazing, and they don't do it. And then they stop talking to me, because I've given them a choice. The only problem is they have to be responsible. I mean, they thought I would, you know, fix it for them. It's not how it works, right? You got to fix it yourself. And that's why, I've died 6 times, hoping that that would fix it for me, but it didn't. I kept coming back because, I agreed before I was born that I would do all that I'm doing now. And, I've done a lot before now. But, and I thought, the first time I died, well, Lord, I've done more than anyone else has. So shouldn't I? No, sorry, kid. Go on back down. You got more to do. So I hang in there and do more. And so that's why I kept making it funner and funner because, okay, if I got to do this, if I got to slog away with this, I'm going to have a good time doing it. Right? Which gave me experience, which gave me self confidence, which then made people anxious because, oh, you know who you are and you actually go out and do stuff. Oh my God, you make me feel so inferior. Oh, give me a friggin' break. So anyway, and I don't care, because I know all of this is irrelevant. The only truth there is love's co-creation. The only way you're getting out of here, because man, you die, you're coming back. The wearing blender of karma. And you really want to do that, much better to step up, you know, get a pair of ovaries and be a woman, come on, step up, be brave, don't give up, don't give in, don't be mean, always be kind, always be empathetic, you know, always be creative, always be there as the savage of art's perfection and love's co-creation. Be the artist in the first person. When I give people cold readings, and I always say, "Oh, you're an artist." Well, I'm not an artist. I can't draw. I can't. No, if you do anything with that connection, whether it's playing a sport or cooking or doing anything, your job, whatever. Meaning, recently I was an electrician for 50 years. I mean, I'm still am an electrician. Is that I enjoy doing that work. It gives me a sense of satisfaction, And in the 70s and 80s, when I was in the heart of the art world in New York and Soho and Tribeca, and I was doing really creative stuff on lots of different realms, people kept saying, "Oh, you should do this. You should, So I had an art gallery. I did do this. I did do that. I did have theaters. I did do all those kind of things for fun. I didn't do it as a career, right? Because if I did it as a career, I remember, I had I had a number of what I called zombie nightclubs, after-hour clubs. After regimes closed, after they threw everyone out of the discos at 2 in the morning, people could come to these things, and they were in abandoned buildings, and they were interesting. And anyway, so a lot of theater people, music people, and I worked in theaters. I worked in music. I worked in all of those things, and they'd all say, "Boy, you're more talented than anybody. So why don't you, do something artistic?" I say, "I am. Look at this place. I am doing something." Oh, well, okay. Why don't we get behind you? And I did that a couple of times, and it was so boring because it was business. Now when I did these real fresh, that was the word I liked, fresh events and things, I made money, but I didn't turn it into a business. I made enough money to do whatever the heck I wanted to do, right? And that was fine by me. And that was the universe, loves co-creation, always taking care of me. That's why I don't worry about paying my bills. I'm pushing 70, and I've never had to worry about paying my bills, right? I've always, as my grandma would say, I always have lived like a millionaire and not had to be one, right? And that's what I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be that millionaire because I saw what it did to my dad. He was real creative. He was, he was pretty good at making money, and he was pretty good at having a good time too. But he got so wound up with being a millionaire and being having status, you know? Who wants somebody's stinky status, you know, when you can be yourself, right? And if you're breathing in that 20% and breathing out that 30%, and you're in state right now, you're seeing who you really are and try to make that person that you're living in the mud puppet world of the non existent reality more like who you really are, you know, that child of love's co creation. And if more of us did that, and more of us, you know, lived our life with empathy for the other of all our relations, the more we would not have war, the more we would not have, you know, and basically this virus that was manufactured. And see, the thing about this manufactured thing is that it's whenever you do that, you are going out of balance of, you know, love's co-creation. And when you do that, that's when you have the unexpected consequence, you know? That's when the asteroid comes flying out of nowhere. Like last week, a thing the size of, oh, a shopping center flew between the Earth and the moon, right? And it was coming at us at a certain angle where NASA couldn't figure out its true trajectory. You know, the last, you know, 4 hours between it approaching the backside of the moon and Earth, well, they didn't know whether it was going to hit the Earth or zip by like all the other. And we've had a number of these near uh, Earth events, like, oh, since I started watching them in 81, we maybe had 500. And any one of them, if they had actually come into our atmosphere, we would have had a Tunguska. And like back in, I think it was 1911, a thing about, you know, the size of, oh, mm, you know, a destroyer, right? Something that was like, you know, 200 meters long, maybe 50 meters wide, was like 1,000 um, tons, came into our atmosphere and straight for this swampy area in Russia where, you know, just a handful of people lived and did not hit the ground, meaning it wasn't big enough to make it to the ground, but it was coming in at like, you know, 72,000 miles an hour, you know, and hit the atmosphere and got really super hot. And, you know, that heat, it heated up the air. And so about 12,000 feet above the, or even a little higher, maybe 20,000 feet above the ground surface, it basically went critical. You know, it was so hot and all the gases, it just blew up. And something, a 200 square mile area, first was, well, it was just a forest of these pine trees. And majority of them were pushed straight into the ground because it was a marshy area. So it was soft. And so it pushed them straight into the ground. And the ones that were hanging sideways got all tangled up. And then, you know, the ones towards the epicenter of when this thing came in, you know, burned up, you know, the ball of heat. It was like being in a rotisserie oven. And now, if that had hit, let's say, Moscow or one of the other cities in Europe, it would have done what happened to Chicago. But Chicago had two fires. It had one in the um, early 1800s when it was because of its location on the Great Lakes, and they were bringing, before the Civil War, railroads to it. Um, so the city grew up very quickly, so it was made out of wood. And Mrs. McGillicuddy's cow kicked over the lantern, and they had a big fire, right? And it wasn't a gigantic city. It was a city of maybe, you know, 70,000 people. You know, big city for beginning part of the 1800s, right? For the 1800s. after the 1812 war, when the Manifest Destiny was soldered in. So, but the Chicago fire that everyone really talks about happened after the Civil War, right? And what that was another astronomical thing of an asteroid or a comet that came in and broke up in parts and smashed into Chicago. And not just Chicago, but Illinois and the surrounding states. There's a guy named Fortean, the Fortean Society. Go look up Fortean Society. And he used to be the science editor for the Herald Tribune. And he, was there when it happened. It was like a nuclear weapon hit Chicago. And Chicago at the time was a city of steel and stone and not wood. And it had like 1 million people in it. And so a lot of people died and they were incinerated. And it was just like a nuclear weapon because it was like Hiroshima. There were shadows of people against concrete walls. And the people weren't there, but their shadow was. So there have been really strange things that have gone on. They dug up, Nephilim, giants, and they found really exotic technology in the midst of coal mines 900 feet underground, where the coal was all around it, meaning the coal has been there for 2 million years. And they found it like, let's just say a spaceship, but some super exotic technology, 1,000 to 1,000,000 years ahead of what we got now. So, and our technology, the stuff that you see flying around out there, kids, is not alien. It is ours. We have a breakaway civilization, right? Go, what's his name? Robert Dolan. I don't know if that Robert's his first name, but the guy who coined the phrase breakaway civilization, he's an interesting guy because he's a real historian. He's not like a guy like David Wilcox. Now, look, Wilcox has some interesting information. Corey Good does too, but those guys are like, they make David Icke look like, an insurance salesman. So, anyway, so there's 4 of you there and 4 thumbs up. I like that. You can't say anything because for some reason, every now and then when I talk like this, the powers of gods of the internet don't let you talk back to me. And anyway, so that's what it is. So I'm going to go make dinner. It's now 6, almost 6:30. Maybe I'll come back later this evening, maybe 8 or 9, 10 o'clock. And I will, talk some more, And again, you're in a deep, deep, deep relaxed state. You're in state. You are, illuminated yourself with prana and taken yourself into your Akashic record. And you've been looking at the big book of everything I'm talking about. It's right there on that screen, right? And maybe tonight we will be a little more focused on doing the guided meditation, or you can go to this morning's because I did it extremely like a guided meditation. I used to do it for the corporate elite, right? I'd be a couple hundred people in an auditorium and I do a guided meditation and show them how to see things, right? Some of them got it and used it for their business and, wow, this is amazing. Others said, oh, everyone went there, but not everyone practiced it, right? So anyway, so here it is. So 1 hour and 9 minutes. So when we get to 1 hour, 10 minutes and 10 seconds, I will say our revoir. So let's pray between now and then, since you're in state. When I sign off, I will snap my fingers and you will come back completely. But for now, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. As was in the beginning, is now, ever shall be, and every day and every way we take the peace of the earth with loves co-creation and make it stronger. And Father Earth and Father Sky and Mother Earth. Let that prana connect with that chi and put, protect us indeed. Enlarge our territory. Put your hands on our shoulders and keep us from evil so we will do no harm. Right? So, 1, 2, 3. You're back. You're back. You're back. You've just had an amazing experience, and come tonight. Bring more people. Let's get some more people into this. So, it's getting closer to the end of the window of opportunity, and more into the strangeness that's all around us. So, you want to be able to see it. Your Sensei El Bob, your Griot will tell you a good story. Love you guys. See you later. Maybe 9 o'clock.